Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This session focuses on deepening financial inclusion and, very importantly, the issue of corporate governance as an instrument for driving that. I think what was very interesting yesterday, for those who were here yesterday, was the beautiful collaboration being introduced between the public sector and private sector in pushing corporate governance. Very interesting for me, and if we can make it happen, that's going to drive significant change and more like transformation, which we're largely looking for in Nigeria. It was very interesting for me in particular to hear, to see Murphy, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, and the Financial Reporting Council, those two arms of government, talking about how to drive corporate governance. Now, Ministry of Finance Incorporated was where I started my career. Then we had held investments in places like First Bank and Union Bank those days when I was a little girl. And today, they hold 40 companies with what I heard yesterday, I think a capitalization of about 40 trillion. Just imagine the whole essence of corporate governance is making the best decisions. So if you imagine that decisions being taken without good corporate governance is at best average, and we can push corporate governance to high levels of excellence, just imagine what that does to that 40 trillion and the value it brings to the system. So it was very exciting to see Murphy talking about driving corporate governance, and the MD is here. The chairman, Alhaji Samsudeen, was here. With all his history in those areas, private sector, public sector. And we just hope that that works so greatly. And then you had the Financial Reporting Council. And we know the role Financial Reporting Council has played to date with regards to various aspects of corporate governance, including risk management. So with that at the back of our minds, we're going to have a conversation through this panel, very distinguished panel, and we're going to be looking at corporate governance with regards to financial inclusion. Like we all know, the financial system is a primary driver of economic development. And if we can get it right, I know between the private and the public sectors, that will be great. One interesting institution on the public sector side I must also mention, I met yesterday, is the new Credit Corp. That's the Consumer Credit Corporation, federal government. So imagine heightened corporate governance driving Credit Corp. So we have great conversations to have today, and it's very important to understand the diversity, the beautiful diversity of our panel. My background is a blend, starting public sector, ending in banking, done some corporate, then on focus areas, risk, strategy, corporate governance. Then, if we look at the team, you would look to my left, starting from our dear lady in red, with a background that spans financial services. I remember she also got involved in some development finance institutions, and then financial sector drivers of today, big drivers of digital banking, retail banking, financial inclusion, sitting on the board of a UBA that's stretched all over Nigeria and one of Nigeria's oldest financial institutions. So I'm sure she can speak to both sides of the topic, which is both financial inclusion as well as the corporate governance side. Now, you have next to her, so we have commercial banking, etc. Then we have Prince Olashore, who represents the other side of financial markets, which is capital markets. And capital markets is very interesting today. We are busy selling shares, and this is a very unique time for us to hear him with regards to financial inclusion. Are these shares being bought up by all the big guns? How are we bringing in the people, the ordinary man, into all of this? And if for any reason we're going to be going out to sell Morphe's companies and the NNPCs, how does all of this roll into financial inclusion? And how can corporate governance be so strengthened before those rollouts begin? Now, at the other end, I think Taiwo Joda, lovely, microfinance. So we have the big boys in commercial banking, and then we have microfinance. And that is the level I would love to hear what he has to say. Microfinance in Nigeria has come a long way. It started as the place to go for those who couldn't get commercial banking licenses those days. But I think they've grown and matured to understand that they have a very interesting and unique role to play. Just the way the local government level of local government tier may end up being about the most important level of government if we get it right, and begin to see doctors and lawyers going in there as local government chairmen, etc. So that's what microfinance is supposed to do. And to be nice to hear what they're saying about corporate governance. We have 800 to 900 microfinance banks in Nigeria. And he sits on one of the leading microfinance banks that has set the pace in this market. That's Axion, right? Okay. So he represents microfinance. And then we have my brother here who is on the bigger side trying to help on the smaller side. And that's Development Bank of Nigeria. Development Bank of Nigeria, very interesting setup, international stakeholders trying to see how to help drive the financial services sector. Again, they've done a lot of things with regards to trying to push financial inclusion. And it would be nice to see what he has to say. So great diversity. We have Bank of Industry. That is a government financial institution that has kept standing before I graduated, and now, many years after I've graduated, refused to be brought down by the forces of the public sector. You know what I mean. And we should give them a round of applause. They've gone through metamorphosis, change of name, but they've still remained strong. And I'm sure with great corporate governance, and I'm sure a lot to come, they would have a lot to tell us this morning. So I think on that note, I should raise your expectations, and I'm sure we're expecting some takeaways from this lovely panel. I think at this point, there's a presentation by Bank of Industry. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dayo Aderugo. I'm the General Manager of Management Services at Bank of Industry, and I'm here to represent Dr. Olashopo Lucy, who is unavoidably absent and sends his apologies, SARS and Mars. Before we start, I'm not sure I should be on this chair, because I'm just a representative who is here to read the speech on behalf of my principal. I will try to make it as short as possible, then I'll join the panel to equally learn as well from what these great minds have to say. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Corporate governance is a system of rules and practices that determines how an organization operates and how it aligns with the interests of all its stakeholders. Good corporate governance aims to enhance the value of a company through ethical behavior, embracing a policy of openness and fairness, and ensuring informed decision-making throughout the company. Financial inclusion refers to efforts to make financial products and services accessible and affordable to all individuals and businesses, regardless of their personal net worth or company size. Deepening corporate governance and achieving sustainable financial inclusion are two critical aspects of fostering economic growth and development. And as a DFI, this is one of our main mandates, to bank the unbanked and make finance accessible to all across Nigeria, regardless of status. Financial inclusion is a critical driver of economic growth, poverty reduction, and social development. It expands access to financial services for underserved populations. In recent time, financial inclusion is a critical development policy priority in many countries, particularly in developing countries, and most particularly in Nigeria, through the development banks and infrastructure banks and other government agencies. The provision of formal banking services to undeserved populations has the potential to alleviate poverty and stimulate economic growth. However, the risks have been identified and are humongous in developing countries like ours. These include lack of access to financial infrastructure, high cost of financial services, limited financial literacy, low trust in financial institutions, social and cultural barriers, and data privacy concerns. There's a nexus between financial inclusion and corporate governance. Good corporate governance is essential for financial institutions to promote financial inclusion. It can enhance corporate governance by increasing transparency and accountability. Both components are critical for building trust and stability in financial systems. The role of transparency, accountability, and responsibility in corporate governance is about creating a framework that ensures ethical behavior in businesses, fosters trust amongst stakeholders, and promotes the long-term sustainability of the businesses. Strategies to deepen corporate governance in the balanced board composition. Balanced board composition. Greater diversity on boards introduces new ways of thinking and creative methods of solving problems, which prevent directors from resting on their laurels. It provides a broader sense of viewpoints and fresh perspectives using strategic succession planning. Follow sustainability best practices. Ensure auditor independence. Evaluate board strategy and ensure director independence. Transparency. Define shareholder rights. Aim for long-term value creation. Manage risks proactively. Improvement of compliance and corporate governance regulations. There's legal and policy framework for corporate governance in Nigeria, which I'm sure the audience here is aware of: CAMA, ISA, FRCN, the Code of Corporate Governance, Securities and Exchange Commissions. Regulators and policymakers play a critical role in promoting both corporate governance and financial inclusion. The Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, which was first published in 2018, provides a framework for the governance of companies operating in Nigeria. Some of the key provisions: board of directors and officers of the board, board committees, transparency and disclosure, risk management and internal control, ethics and corporate social responsibility, remuneration. Permit me to just take a few minutes to talk about BOI's corporate governance structure. As an executing agency of government, the Bank of Industry has been supporting the rail sector in Nigeria by providing financial assistance and business support services for the establishment of large, medium, and small projects. such as the expansion, diversification, and modernization of existing enterprises and rehabilitation of existing ones. We provide long-term loans for working capital and procurement of equipment, all at a maximum interest rate of 10%. We provide financial support to enterprises engaged in manufacturing activities in core sectors of the economy: agriculture, oil and gas, mining, solid minerals, engineering and technology, etc. We support emerging sectors such as creative industries, renewable energy, women-owned businesses, and youth businesses. The bank, through its board of directors, specifically ensures that we comply with the codes of corporate governance as are applicable to the bank. The board of directors is responsible for the provision of overall guidance to management regarding the bank's operation and the stewardship of its assets. The board ensures that a framework of rules and policies is in place to guarantee accountability, impartiality, and openness in its interaction with every stakeholder. The board delegates some of its powers to 3 committees: Board Credit and Investment and Governance, Board Audit and Risk Committee, Board Strategy and Compliance. The board of directors is made up of 9 members: the board chairman, the MD CEO, 4 executive directors, and 4 non-executive directors. In conclusion, we would like to see that collaboration of all stakeholders is essential for deepening corporate governance, and collaboration where the public sector, such as Bank of Industry, is responsible for the introduction of policies for overall development of the financial sector, to lower the cost of financial services, which is our main mandate, and we're proud to say all our loans are single digit. Improve innovative capacity and help increase access to finance, especially for the underbanked, the unbanked, and the rural areas. We currently have a program called RAPID, which is giving access to finance to only the rural areas in Nigeria. And we specifically put 70% of women who would otherwise not have access to finance to be the beneficiaries of these grants. The private sector for the adoption of sound corporate governance within organization, necessary to drive investor and consumer confidence, financial performance, innovation, and financial sustainability. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much on behalf of the Managing Director of Bank of Industry. Like I said before, Bank of Industry has done commendably well. And you can see the linkage between their success and corporate governance for those who've been around for quite a while. And she's taken time to speak to us about corporate governance in general, some of the challenges of corporate governance, and took us through the corporate governance framework at a very high level in Bank of Industry. Thank you very much. So let's jump quickly to the discussion with the panel. And I'm going to focus the discussion on 3 major areas, and I will just need our panelists to give me very short, quick, incisive perspectives to the questions so we can cover the areas in 30 minutes. First question is, in your space, for each of the interesting groups that we have, I would like to know how well we're doing with regards to financial inclusion. So far, where are we? Before we begin to complain that we need more corporate governance, because there's some research outcome that I have read that in some environments sees at some point you may begin to have diminishing returns setting in. So before we talk about how much more corporate governance we need, financial inclusion, and I'll start with Angela. What where are we? Are we doing well? Are we to the extreme positive right, extreme positive left? You want to give us a score, and why?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Eileen. And thank you to the organizers of this summit, which is so commendable. The second summit on corporate governance, which is a much needed aspect of society and the economy and economic development. I'd like to thank UBA for giving us the opportunity to speak at this event. So, in Nigeria, we've done a lot. I think that the regulator has done a lot. And I think the regulator has done a lot in terms of policy setting. So the regulator, for instance, let's look at cash policy, cashless policy. That's something that has helped penetration, that has helped financial inclusion. The sustainability principles of 2012, I think it was, that has also helped financial inclusion. Licensing other financial institutions has also helped. So licensing microfinance banks, the moderator talked about 900 microfinance banks. I take pride in the fact that I helped Axion get their license. So that's something that, and before 2003, I don't think there were any microfinance banks. So, the regulator licensed microfinance banks. Also, data sharing. I think that's very important. Consumer protection, setting up credit bureaus that enable one monitor the credit worthiness of customers is also important. I think the central bank has done a lot. Thank you.
I think she's thrown up in just a very clear picture of how the regulation, the public sector, has facilitated financial inclusion over the last decade or two. I mean, she's talked about major things like sustainable banking principles, and that was pushed very strongly by the central bank long before today's sustainability became, a big vocabulary as it is today. She talked about other financial institutions like microfinance banks. Interesting to know about Axion. Data sharing, digital banking, and open banking today. And so quite a few things. And so by the time we go into the second question, I'm sure she'll have time to throw light on that. But kudos to regulation and the regulators in driving financial inclusion. And let me listen to the capital markets angle. How are we doing on financial inclusion? Are we beating the banking sector to it? The capital markets? My daughter has been harassing me about buying shares. And I said, what do you know about shares? But, let me...
Okay, thank you very much. Again, it's a pleasure being here. I think I'm quite lucky that I operate in the capital market, for which the whole issue of financial inclusion and serving the underserved market or bringing in different communities is the bedrock of taking a company public. And if I can just give an example of how the regulator and the environment has enforced that. I've been involved in privatization. Actually, I did one of UBA in 1993. And if you can remember, in those days, it was even mandatory for us that if you had to sell the shares, you must spread it to all majority of Nigerians along the 91 territorial districts. So, and that was at the root cause of that policy, i.e., how we bring everybody to participate in the capital market. Not just sell shares in Lagos. How do you now on the back of that, it can only be successful on the back of education. Therefore, to get financial inclusion, one of the bedrock is what? Educating people, going around and letting people know the advantages and disadvantages of that. So that's that aspect. Even naturally now, if you are going to get quoted on the stock exchange, you now talk about minimum spread. You cannot have a company and one person owns it 90%. It's almost mandatory that you must sell down. You can't say you're a public company and you just have one person with 99% of the shares. No. I think the current rule is probably about 70, minimum of, maximum of 70% that must be held by the core investor. So what that means, again, is that the market, on the secondary market, is also enforcing the whole area of financial inclusion. And from a capital market point of view, it's also bringing to the fore the need for you, therefore, to make your company able to attract capital from members of the general public. Corporate governance comes next, and I'll tell you how corporate governance plays a role in how you can make that successful. So what that tells you that it is a primary responsibility of you as the issuing house to ensure that this issue of spread, bringing in other markets, bringing in other sectors, is a key component of whatever you're going to do in the capital market, and it's enforced by regulations that we currently have in place. So that's just my opening point from a capital market perspective. So clearly, if a private company even comes up to us and now says, I want to go public, we usually tell them at the end of the day, because of the need to have to sell to members of the public, usually it takes about 2 to 3 years to prepare you for that kind of sale. What that means, how do you now ensure that you have a company that is attractive for those who know nothing about you? Insiders know a lot, but for those who know nothing, what that means again is that within your structure, corporate governance plays a key role, and we must now ensure that we must make sure that the way we present you to members of the public that don't know you is one that will make you very attractive. So that's my first point from a capital market perspective, both from the primary end, which is sale to the public, and from the secondary end, which is the sale on the stock market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just hold the microphone. I just wanted to ask you to, if you had to give a subjective score to financial inclusion in the capital markets versus the commercial banking, how would you?
It's a big negative.
Some kind of score.
No, look, on a score 0 to 10, we'll be at the lower end, 0, 1, 2. And I'll give you the reason why.
What rate?
1, 2 out of 10. You can only talk about inclusion. I started by saying information is key. People must be aware. But the bedrock of the capital market is about what? Confidence. It's about confidence. And when there is no confidence, nobody is going to invest. And we've seen what has happened. I don't want to go into details on that. We've seen what has happened in the capital market over the past couple of years. We're just now trying to build back confidence in the market so that people now can come in and say it is a place for you to invest. One will still make the point that the equity market, let me just take the equity, I won't talk about the fixed income or the bond market, is still the best investment over a long period. And the empirical studies are there, but you find it challenging to explain to anybody because of their own experiences in the last 5 to 10 years where a lot has happened. And this topic, or this seminar, is about corporate governance. And the root cause of all the failures we had is about lack of corporate governance. You get not just from the investors who are not knowledgeable, but from those who are the gatekeepers who, due to lack of corporate governance, simply were selling things and doing things that were totally unethical. And the challenge we now face in our environment is the fact that when things even go wrong, we find it extremely difficult to punish wrongdoers. And when you don't punish wrongdoers, how do you expect others to come into the marketplace? That is our biggest challenge in this country. I'll give an example. In most environments, even when things go wrong, the next thing you see governments do is probably set up a kind of inquiry to go and investigate. Go and investigate, let's see what went wrong, and how can we put in things for safeguards. In Nigeria, it's totally absent. So when I go to the investing public and I tell them come and invest, they just will refer to the last time we invested, things went wrong. What happened? Both from the players, both from the regulator, both from the companies. So those are some of the challenges. Corporate governance has a cost. It has a cost. How do you encourage companies to incur the cost of corporate governance when they are so sure they can recoup that cost and they see other players not incurring that cost and the market seems to be rewarding them or the environment seems to be rewarding them? Those are some of the challenges of corporate governance in Nigeria. Do you get it? That it has a cost, but we will tell you, and I won't give companies, even when I was very active, you could tell 2 companies, same balance sheet. A mere visit to the companies, just visiting, you can tell the one from the gate. You tell the one with good corporate governance and the one without. Do you get it? Even down to things like signing in, what time is your appointment, you could see governance run in through, and governance is part and parcel of the structure of the company, right from the gate to the boardroom. Sometimes we elevate corporate governance to the boardroom. No, it's about a culture, it's about the way you do things, it's about how others perceive their role as meeting the goals and objectives of the company. So you cannot take corporate governance, even within the context of this, outside the role of public sector, because again, that's what we call public sector, private sector partnership. How do you enforce corporate governance in the private sector when the public sector, who are the ones who set the moral tone for the country, are totally lacking in that area? So it's almost a discussion in futility, that we know where to start from, and we know exactly where to get things going. Sorry, I can go on and on. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think you set the basis for the next round of questions. But let me summarize what you said. Scale of 1 to 100, single digits. I crouched when you said that. But the truth is the truth. No, it's okay. It's okay. You don't need to. Single digits, that tells us a lot. For those who are talking to us about moving to a $1 trillion economy, if we don't have this capital market in the right place through corporate governance, we have a lot of work to do. And I know that you were being very cautious but I'm sure we'll talk outside this forum. Well, thanks for being frank on that. And we were trying to compare that to the commercial banking sector. Now, let's try and understand what we're trying to achieve here in terms of financial inclusion. This is a powerful economy of over 200 to 250 million people. And, I'm told half of us are below poverty lines. We started talking about financial inclusion when things were not this bad. I don't know, maybe we need to even change the name from financial inclusion to financial resurrection. So, because we're talking about banking and buying shares for people who can barely get a loaf slice of bread for breakfast. But anyway, it's these conversations are usually strategically for the short, medium to long term. So let's have a conversation around my favorite area, which is microfinance. And at this point in time, financial inclusion, the ordinary Nigerian, not the Victoria Island Nigerian, not the Ikoyi Nigerian. And like Mr. Olasore said, not the Lagos Nigerian. Just shut your eyes and go back into, each of us comes from somewhere. You know, even if I'm from Lagos, in Isaleko, financial inclusion, microfinance, liking you to like community banks in the States.
That's right.
Wow, they're doing great things there. Yeah. So let's start by that score. 1 to 100, subjective. Single digits, in the upper 20s, and then you now tell us.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. I'd like to thank Mrs. Eke and Mr. Olasore, who betted Axiom Microfinance Bank. It's a privilege to be sitting there with you here. So let's start from the scoring. I'm going to first go by data, and then I'll go personal. So AFINA, in its financial inclusion study, believes that we've done significantly well with financial inclusion in the Southwest. But we've done very badly in the North, and we've reached an average in terms of where financial inclusion targets set by the federal government, an average in the Southeast. So they gave Lagos and Southwest 75%, 38% to the North, and in the Southeast and South-South, an average of 67%. Now, let me divide financial inclusion into two. Okay, so one is to make payment services available, banking services available, whether it's microfinance or commercial bank, to the individuals, so they have access to payments. The people in the rural areas and peri-urban areas are able to do transactions. And in the last 5 years, we see the growth of agent banking. We see the growth of USSD, which I think is the next best thing that has happened after bread and butter. I mean, USSD is what you can use your basic feature phones to do. So we've seen the growth of payment banking. But financial inclusion in the area of providing credits and loans for those little businesses, I think we've scored very low in that area. And around that, I will give it like a 25%. That's one area we can do so much more. And again, this performance, and I'm not going to jump the gun, I'll leave that for the moderator, can be linked to corporate governance issues and a lot of facts that we can dig into later. Action has been around for 16 years. In that 16 years, we have given loans to 110,000 people, disbursed 87 billion, and we have over 536,000 savings customers. And why is financial inclusion a big issue? Because financial inclusion relates more to the people at the bottom of the pyramid. They relate more to that 120 million people who are living below poverty and who are wondering, why do I need a bank? And who are also intimidated by the beautiful banks and see it as a clear waste of time to go and ask for that 100,000, 200,000 to do their businesses and their transactions. If you look at our balance sheet today, the average loan to 110,000 people is just about 500,000 naira. And that helps them a lot to drive the market. So I think what we need is more of collaboration to take financial inclusion to the next level. The fintechs have disrupted the payment space. The banks are doing their bit, but with a bit more collaboration, we can drive these numbers. And I'm also very excited to talk about gender inclusion. The highest number of borrowers in our books are females. But when you talk about value, those who take more loans are male, and the men, and you can understand that. So financial inclusion has done very well, and with the support of the likes of BOI and DBN, who have come up with intervention funds, we have also been able to give to those people at the bottom of the pyramid at a reasonable pricing that is not killing their business. By the way, let me hand out this note that Action Microfinance Bank actually only operates with the micro, small, and medium enterprises. We don't give consumer or individual loans. Thank you.
Thank you for emphasizing that. I was speaking last week to somebody who was in charge of MSME. I said, okay, what kind of loan size do you deal with? He says maybe up to about $1 billion. So I said, that's commercial banking through the back door. Through the back door. Okay. Okay. Very interesting feedback. I like some of your statistics where you were scoring Lagos Southwest high on non-credit areas, and nice to see those numbers. And you talked on the credit and lending side. That's where we're generally scoring low, but that is the main path to driving the turnover, the growth of those small businesses, and therefore the wealth. So when we're talking, and you tied everything back again to corporate governance. Same thing, Mr. Shad, corporate governance. So when we come back, it will be nice to listen to how we can get everything up to above 70 from you. So, our dear DBN, you come with a very nice blend of local and international. What do you see as where we are now in terms of financial inclusion? And then we'll quickly move on from there.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and good morning, everyone. I don't intend to give you another statistics because I quite agree with Taiwo as to the rates and all that. But looking at DBN perspective, DBN in its own as a wholesale bank, DFI, that is focused on MSME, is already involved in the financial inclusion space. We realize the fact that the Nigerian MSMEs, they are really financially excluded. I don't know how many of us realize that the last statistics or survey that MBS did, the Nigerian MSMEs actually dropped from 41.5 million to 39.5. So that means there's still a lot that needs to be done in that space alone. They're already financially excluded. Less than 5% of them have access to finance. Then coming again into financial inclusion and looking at it deeply, it's not just only about the businesses, it's also about groups, different areas, talking about gender financing. The women enterprises are also finding it difficult to access financing. We also look at young people. The young people in Nigeria find it very difficult to access finance. We also look at people in economically challenged states. So people were talking about, I normally don't want to say region, I don't want to call North and all of that, because it makes it look as if something is wrong, right? But there are some areas that people are financially challenged and they don't have access to finance. Maybe due to the geographies of that area, the situation, security, and all of that. So we also look at that. Then there's something else we keep forgetting. People that start up business. Nigerian young people and others don't find jobs. And a lot of people are thinking about how to do something for themselves. They start up this business, nobody's giving them loans. So what do we do about that as well? And then looking again at another challenge that is causing a lot of financial inclusion issues, financial literacy. Is the man that knows what to ask for, that will go and ask for something important. Then they go to these big banks. We are brought up to think of profit. So because of that, when we see you walk into our banking hall, we are thinking, how much is this one bringing? How much is that one bringing? So we'll gravitate to the big customers that are going to give us more income. Information asymmetry is a major issue. And so what are we doing at DBN? Being a wholesale bank, we've come up with incentives to incentivize our PFIs to go to those areas. We have KPIs on financial inclusion, and that has encouraged us or enabled us to ensure that the total number of female embarrassed that we have is 72% of our entire disbursement. And if you look at the fact that at financial literacy, we have trained over 20 banks in Nigeria. So we've done 10 big banks, we've done 10 MFBs, including Taiwo that is seated there. I'm sure he can attest to that. And we do this training at our own cost. Training also includes taking a group of the staff of these institutions to Europe, Africa, Kenya, to look at best practices, especially around microfinance and all of that. We've done all of that. And then individually looking at the MSMEs themselves, we've done capacity building. We've trained over 4,000 MSMEs in Nigeria today. And we have plans that within the next 5 years, we're going to scale up to 500,000 Nigerian MSMEs. And finally, the young people. We've come up with programs. Like we just concluded the Entrepreneur Summit in Lagos, because we realized that most of the technology startups are based in Lagos anyways. And part of the incubation center and all of that we had, we also awarded prizes minimum like 5 million to the best people. And we believe that with all of that and the collaboration that in Taiwan, other panelists mentioned, we are going to see a lot more happening within this industry. Thank you very much.
Okay, so from an impact standpoint, in one sentence, high, low, medium.
Okay, so impact, we need to do a lot more. So we need to get a lot of high.
It's high now?
Right now, we have not done much. I'm talking of the country generally. I'm not talking of DBN. Yeah? So, yeah.
Countrywide, we're low.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, I heard you, and I know quite a lot of what DBN does. I heard a lot of the very nice things. You brought out some very major issues about young people who want to have startups and are not being supported. You talked a lot about, when you are old and you're struggling not to use your glasses. I hope you get the message. So you talked about women, you talked about young people, you talked about challenged states, you talked about startups. And this is the time when we need startups. Not everybody can work in a bank or, and economists try to encourage startups. You talk about financial literacy, lack of information. You said something very, very real. If you imagine that half of this population is below poverty level, even many of us in this room are quasi-poverty level, that's the truth. We're just wearing suits and nice dresses and posing. Isn't it true? You don't agree? This poverty is cutting across no respect of persons. You're even posing in responding. It's a VI pose, eh? But I think something that we heard with regards from when you listen to when we're talking about the microfinance angle, is the fact that some people are even intimidated to go into a commercial bank. And so access to information, even going there to make an inquiry is a problem. So I hear a lot of what you said, beautiful things, but I like the honest feedback that from an impact standpoint, we're still low and we have a long way to go. Okay? So we're going to do a very quick, fast round on solutions. And the solutions are going to be between corporate governance, regulation, policy, other ideas, what has worked, what has not, what are the solutions? And I will start with you, Angela, because the general consensus is that on financial inclusion, we have a long way to go. So, corporate governance, regulation and policy, other add-ons, how can we move this needle to where we want it to be?
Thank you. What has worked? What hasn't worked? On solutions going forward. Okay. So I think that we need to elevate the discussion to ESG, because inclusion is an aspect of the S, the social aspect. And so we should be saying to ourselves, in terms of corporate governance, we should be saying to ourselves, do we have an ESG strategy as an organization? Do we have an ESG strategy? Is financial inclusion an aspect of that ESG strategy? Do we have metrics that define the success of the ESG strategy that we put in place? Is ESG an agenda item for boards? Is it on our, is it an agenda item at our board meetings? Is there a board committee that monitors ESG strategy, because it's, you know, if we want to think beyond governance, we must think ESG, and we must think financial inclusion as an aspect. So that's very critical. I think the regulator plays a key role, and corporates play a key role, banks play a key role. I think it's important to look at our role as, you know, as a board. What do we do as a board? If corporate governance is about how companies are directed and controlled, what do we do as a board to enable that? And it's all about strategy. It's all about policy formulation. It's all about oversight. Okay? So when we look at strategy, again, what innovative products are we putting in place to ensure that we're providing financial services to all? Okay, so what products are we coming up with? You know, so AI is a big thing now. You know, AI is something that everybody is on everybody's mind. I'm sure everybody has an AI app on their phone. But what risk governance framework have we put around AI, you know, to ensure that, you know, there's an ethical culture around AI? You know, you don't want to, we talked about data breaches and data protection. You don't want a situation where people are putting data in an AI, you know, an AI app, and your confidential information is being leaked. So you have to put a framework, a governance framework around that. And as a board, we should be monitoring risk governance, you know, cybersecurity. So we're providing all this technology, all these financial products where we're extending our reach, not by brick and mortar, but by telephony, by, you know, the internet, by mobile phones. What risk governance framework do we have around that? And, you know, the regulators play a key role in that, because they must share data. Must share data around, you know, breaches. They must share data around fraud, you know, so that we can all share the information that's coming out and come up with solutions that address the risks that we face. So it's around, it's around strategy. What products do you have? Making it an agenda item, monitoring your strategy, having metrics, and, you know, managing them. It's around risk management, around those innovative products. It is around policy, so ensuring that you have a governance framework that protects the organization, and clearly making, you know, empowerment, making the right decisions around, you know, the products you've come up with. And this is at the organizational level, and it is at the regulator level, you know. So it's the regulator also must come up with a strategy that is more broad. The regulator must come up with policies. The regulator must come up with, you know, a risk environment that addresses all. So it's at both levels. I think that's really what I want to share. One thing I'm very proud of that Nigeria does, you know, UBA has, all that we do in Nigeria, we extend across Africa. And I'm very proud of the College of Supervisors, which is the regulatory body across Africa that collaborates, you know, on regulation, on data sharing, etc. So anything that we're experiencing across the countries, we're able to share. So this is also, you're seeing success transfer, not just from Nigeria, but across Africa. Thank you.
Okay, I think financial inclusion rests on trust. These people, if you are in that category, you want to protect everything you have. So you want to be safe, you want to make sure you're dealing with safety, and those are some of the things that have just been spoken to. So the regulators have a main role. We have 0 minutes left, so I'll ask my colleagues to please speak within 5 seconds. So, so we can wrap it up. But very powerful, compressed. You know, we're dealing with CNG now, compressed gas.
Okay. Mine is actually very simple. I'm operating in the capital market. So first of all, you need what I call education. People must understand it. We have the capital market, we have the money market. People get confused as to, because we have an environment that is dominated by the money market. People now try to see that they want a return of money market from the capital market. Capital market is more for the long term, money market looks at the short term. So the bottom line, therefore, in the capital market is issue of trust. If you want to get inclusion, get more people in, I want them to see for the long term that we cater for, you must be able to assure them in the long term they'll be fine. That's where issue of trust, issue of investor education is very key. Now, to get the inclusion that you want, you also have to talk about the products. What products are you going to bring to the market that will enable people at the retail end, people that are not included, how do you not get them into the market? Therefore, it's about the product development. If you see what we are doing among what you call mutual funds, you get that speaks to the retail. You can have all kinds of mutual funds that can are targeted at different areas or that are excluded or different demographics or even different sectors. So actually the products that are there, I think our biggest challenge now is issue of education. And I must say this, the education now is not just for the investing public. It's even down to the regulator, down to government for us to understand the difference between what the capital market does and what the money market does. And leadership turns up when it comes to capital market. Even when it comes to government, sometimes I think in the new government we've seen a change of behavior. In the previous one, they need money. The first thing they do is ways and means, which is almost at the short end. Of course, you are killing the capital market when you do that. It's a separate seminar, the linkages when you do that kind of thing. But we hope with a bit more discipline, people will understand that the capital market has a much bigger role. And if I look at the percent of capital market or even the equity market to our GDP, it is very minute. It should be over 100% of GDP, and we are nowhere near that. But how do we get over 100% to get that inclusion? It's about education, it's about product, it's about leadership, it's about government also understanding that they need to get that market going. So that would be my short term. Thank you.
Thank you. In one sentence from you, what is the biggest change you would like to see with corporate governance for the capital markets to help drive inclusion?
Punishment.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why I'm saying punishment. I've had to say this before. When you have companies fail or you have boards dissolved, I never hear any follow-up by anybody to do a case study to say this is what they've done wrong so that others can learn. The problem is that we all learn by what we see. And when we see bad behavior, we all follow through. The biggest challenge for inclusion and growth is about what? We can talk about corporate governance. I've said it has a cost, but if you're unable to have an environment that also sees what is wrong and punishes it, how do you tell those who are doing something right to do the right thing? And it turns up everywhere, whether it's the capital market or anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Corporate governance to drive financial inclusion. What's the biggest thing you would like to see for microfinance?
The biggest thing I'd like to see is, I think on the side of the government, they've done a lot, especially
on the side of who?
The regulators.
Okay.
They've done a lot, especially institutions that are regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria. What is missing is the self-regulation. What is missing is entrenching that culture. Last year, 175 microfinance banks licenses were withdrawn. That's punishment, right? But it didn't give any respite to the market. Because what happens to one happens to all. So what we need to first is self-regulation, and then we hold you by the standard you have set for yourself. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Same question. What's the biggest thing you want to see in corporate governance to drive financial inclusion?
All right, thank you. So for financial inclusion to be sustainable, it has to be affordable, accessible, reliable, and also resilient. So we would like the regulator to come up with stick and carrot policies that will drive this. Then finally, in terms of corporate governance, our board has to ensure that our institutions are managed in a way that build trust between all stakeholders, while at the same time they are doing effective risk management. There's something we should always remember. When we say board should ensure that these are done, we shouldn't forget that effective oversight does not mean micromanaging. So once the strategies are put in place, and luckily most of board now, they are involved in strategy formulation, and the process and policies and procedures are put in place, this is going to ensure that there is trust, because once the public trusts these institutions, they are definitely willing to take on a lot of these services that will lead to greater financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank our Bank of Industry speaker and our lovely panelists who have spoken both from the head and from the heart. And I'm sure we have some good takeaways for the organizers here. I think we have room for maybe 2-3 questions. I was going to skip it, but I saw the hands go up and I realized I couldn't escape. So I think we'll take 1 or 2 questions.
So thank you very much. I think this is a very, very interesting session. So I'm from the Financial Reporting Council, and I can see a lot of regulatory piece coming out from what's being discussed. So we see ourselves as the conscience of regulatory assurance. So let me start with the comment by, not Axiom, the man from, yes, from the capital market. He said corporate governance comes at a cost. It's absolutely true. So when you see Company A doing the right thing, it means he has to be investing a lot in doing that thing. And Company B making savings out of, putting in the right structure, the right level of accountability, etc. And nothing happens. And it goes on for years. So that could be a disincentive for the company doing the right thing, because at the end of the day, there's no deterrence. I can tell you for sure that from a Financial Reporting Council's perspective, we are the regulator for ensuring that corporate governance is deepened in organization. When I came in August last year, the first company we sanctioned is a government entity. And people were calling. I said, you know what, we're just sending a signal to the private sector that, you know what, we are coming. Because it doesn't happen. So we are moving away from the hard issues when it comes to corporate governance. Do you have a board? No. We are going into the soft issues. Diversity on board, commitment to your values, executive compensation, ESG, and all of that. And that's why, I don't know if you follow us, you will see that about a month ago, we did an advert for independent corporate governance reviewers. We're looking for experts, those who have experience both in public and private, to join our monitoring and evaluation team so that they can help to bring in their experience to deepen the level and the scale of the reviews that we do in a structured way. So we've started, and we believe that enforcement is key, in terms of ensuring that we promote good behavior. I have a couple of, other points I want to make, and I'm going to make it very, very quickly. I want to join the belief that, research has shown that a strong corporate governance has a direct correlation with financial inclusion. And that's why I'm very, very interested in this sector. And I'm going to throw it back to you, especially those from the financial institutions that deal or that are supposed to support small businesses or the poorest of the poor. So, and I think there's a governance question there. So, you see, most small businesses are not growing. In fact, they are dying. the poor are not moving from, being poor to middle class. In fact, the middle class is gone. But the banks, especially microfinance banks, they're getting bigger. Is that a governance, is there a governance question? For example, when interest rate was at 16%, microfinance banks were giving loans at 45%. So, is there an issue of financial literacy, for example? Somebody who is running a small business, he doesn't know anything, and you're advertising loan to them at 4%. It sounds small, but 4 times 12 is what? 48%. So it's a global, it's almost predictable that that business will not survive, cannot survive on a 48% loan. So these banks, especially the microfinance, but they're getting bigger, their shareholders are happy for it, right? So, you can provide explanation, but these businesses, of course, you would all agree with me that it's predictable that they cannot. Is that the true cost of fund? Is there a governance question? Is there an ethical question there? So that's the thoughts, I just want to leave, in the room. And the last message is to say that enforcement is key for us as a Financial Reporting Council. And we have started. We believe that it's going to be something that will contribute to the future success of corporate governance in this country. And we're absolutely committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be looking out for you and your enforcement. Please. I hope your voice will be sounding this strong in 2 years' time.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Sotiva Ibuzo, and I work in the civil society sector. I'm concerned that there is an elephant in the room that we have not addressed. The Minister of Finance told us that only 5% of Nigerians have more than 500,000 naira in their bank account. So, when you talk about inclusion, include what? What is the quantum of the remaining 95% to be included? There is the great elephant is inequality. And it's only policy that can address inequality. And policy science has developed across the world that what needs to be done is known. So I think that beyond corporate governance, and the moderator made mention about it when we're talking about solutions. Corporate governance, policy. What kind of policy do you put in a country that hosts the largest number of poor people in the world? 10 years ago, the largest number of poor people were in China, followed by India, because their sheer population is 1.5 billion, 1.4 billion. Nigeria is only 200 million. What happened in China? In 15 years, they lifted 730 million people out of poverty in China. 170 million people out of poverty in India. One of the greatest ways by which they did it is policy, social protection policy. What is the policy of housing in Nigeria? Public-private partnership. Government give you land, you demarcate it, and sell one plot for 10 million. How will poor people have house? It's called policy of social housing. We need to address policy as we look at corporate governance.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think there are two things that have come out of this conversation, the last two speakers. The point you made, which I alluded to in a subtle joke, is the fact that the conversation is gone beyond simple financial inclusion. We're all almost getting trapped in that net. So a lot needs to be done. That's the point. 90%. It's huge. But I also wanted to speak to, so it's a major point you've made, and I'm sure there will be other fora where issues of, public policy will need to be addressed. I'm sure things like that are going on now, because the statistics speak for themselves. It's a crisis situation, okay? So for real. Now, the head of the Financial Reporting Council, I like what you said about your first sanction was to a government entity, okay? And because if we're going to really move things forward, I think we need to push a lot of this corporate governance into our public sector. And I like this collaboration, and I like the firmness with which you speak. We'll just need to keep your muscles up so they don't thin down in time. Okay, we've run out of time, really.
Sorry.
And we'll make it short.
Yes, very short.
Last question.
My name is Joel Popola. I'm the UK, the Institute of Director Chair for Africa Group. We facilitate British businesses across the continent of Africa, and we work with all the diplomatic missions in Africa. My question is to Prince Abimbola, and it's about the confidence in financial inclusion, especially when you look at the diaspora. I know there was a time when Chief Obasanjo was the president.
Keep the question short.
Very short. When he was the president, he ran around the world to raise funds for a corporation from the diaspora. We don't know what becomes of that. What can we do to build this confidence? Because every time we talk to investors, they say Nigeria has enough money abroad amongst the diaspora that they can bring to the country. But how can we ensure we build the confidence? Thank you.
Short answer.
Short answer, good governance. Good governance.
Nice, short answer, good governance.
But please, can you just allow me to just make a quick response from the FRS? You see, there's a fallacy. When there is a failure of government policy or a failure of governance, it is a bit unfair when you now scapegoat a particular sector. It's very easy to scapegoat the banks and making spreads. I also said this. Well, in terms of recession, when things are down, that's when even policy allows banks to do what? Have bigger spreads, because you cannot have a failure of the banking sector. And you allow them those spreads so that the banks can survive, so that when things get better, you can now go back to the bank, narrow the spreads, and now see what you can do about it. So it's always counterintuitive. I can assure you, anywhere in the world, when things are bad, the banks are what? Making bigger spreads. Most likely they're going to do what? Have bigger profits. But it's very easy now to say, because they're making bigger profits, they're the bad guys. No, it's a wrong assumption. That's just my take on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to say a big thank you to the organizers, and I love the partnership. I want to encourage IOD Center for Corporate Governance. Keep up this partnership, and let's be able to see it at higher levels in the next 2 to 3 years. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.